Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. You're joining us from across the United Kingdom for this celebration of the Nuffield Future Researchers programme. My name's Tim Gardam. I'm the Chief Executive of the Nuffield Foundation, and it's my role in the next hour and a half to take us through this event that marks the great achievement of nearly 800 of our Nuffield Future Researchers and your vast array of projects across many scientific disciplines. We'll be hearing from some of you and your supervisors. And I'll also be honoured to introduce our two keynote speakers, Professor Sir Keith Burnett, Chair of the Nuffield Foundation and Fellow of the Royal Society, and Dr. Ozak Esu, who works on the Internet of Things and is a champion encouraging the aspiration of students like you, who are the future of British science. And they'll be giving you a vivid idea of the horizons now opening up to you as scientists and the enormous difference you can make in the world. I'd also like to welcome this afternoon Yvonne Baker, Chief Executive of STEM Learning, the UK's largest provider of education and career support in science, technology, engineering and medicine. STEM Learning is Nuffield's new partner, taking over the management and operation of the Nuffield Research Placement programme from this October, and they will build further on its past success. Now, above all, this is a collective celebration for all of you. In every year before this one, we've held a number of events in cities up and down the country where each student could in person receive your certificate of achievement. Well, the virus has prevented us from doing that this year. And in our new virtual world, we may not be able to meet you all in person as we'd have liked to have done. However, as you gather here today from all 4 nations of the United Kingdom, we want each of you to know how proud of you we are. And I'm now going to start our roll of honour that will roll across the screen throughout this ceremony, naming each of you. So, students and your families, you're crowded around your laptops, keep a lookout for yourselves. And I'm asking it to begin to scroll now. I hope you can see it. Now, throughout this afternoon, if you have any questions or comments, do please add them to the online chat and conversation. And we'll do our best to get back to you later. I'm only sorry we won't have a chance to take the questions live in the time we've got available. So let me tell you a little bit about the background to today. At the same time, I want to record a lot of thank yous to all those who've made possible this year's Nuffield programme in what's been a really and deeply challenging time. The Nuffield Research Placement programme dates back over 20 years. What started as a project to encourage students to study science at university has become that and far more than that. It's a programme to drive opportunity for those students with great aspirations who, often being the first in their family to go to university, don't have that background to have experienced the world of research. So we send students to placements in laboratories, in research institutions across the UK, and we'd like to thank them for generously providing those opportunities. But then this year, the virus and lockdown made it look as if the programme could not take place. But all involved were determined not to be thwarted. So we set about making it an online experience and ended up with a new project, Nuffield Future Researchers. That's you. And that offers more engagement and a richer experience, I hope, than ever before. And all of you have risen to that challenge. You represent the full diversity of talent and determination of your generation. And so I hope you look back on this summer as an experience that set you on your way to what you want to achieve in your lives. But again, none of this would have been possible without the contribution of so many. So I'd like to thank the supervisors who took you on and gave their time to encourage and guide you. Our coordinators spread across the different nations and regions of Britain who found those placements and prepared you for them. I'd like to thank your teachers, your parents, your guardians who encouraged you to apply in the first place and then backed you for a place. And of course, the universities and many other public and private institutions, some of them leading names in global scientific research and in industry. Our thanks go to them for their belief that taking young researchers even before they go to university adds value to what they do. And I'd also personally like to thank my huge thanks and admiration to the small team at Nuffield, Shamila Metcalf and Megan Lawrence, who masterminded all this, and with their colleagues transformed in a matter of months a long-established model into an online experience and then made a success of it. So in a moment, we're going to hear from many different research projects. But first, I'd like to introduce the chair of the Nuffield Foundation, Professor Sir Keith Burnett. Keith is a world-renowned physicist, a Fellow of the Royal Society. He is President of the UK Science Council and a member of the Prime Minister's Council on Science and Technology. He was formerly Vice-Chancellor of the University of Sheffield, where he pioneered the links between academic science and wider society on which the future of us all depends. And so I am now delighted to invite Keith to address you. Keith.
Thank you, Tim, and good afternoon, everyone. And as the chair of the Nuffield Foundation, I am absolutely delighted to welcome you to this achievement, this celebration of your achievements. In more normal times, as Tim said, we'd have got together, we'd have celebrated in person, but there's been really nothing typical about 2020. And you, I'm talking to the people being on the placements, are a generation of people who are living through an enormous period of turbulence in health, the economy, and the environment. So much is different from what we expected. You know, there's a saying, if you want to make the gods laugh, tell them your plans. Yeah, the future we imagine can be overturned by events large and small. But as well as the tough challenges that COVID's laid at our door, I personally have also been very fortunate as a teacher and a mentor to see the response of a new generation of scientists. And I know, I've been looking at the things you're doing, you have taken the opportunity to work on things at universities, at companies, at agencies, to understand problem in real depth and come up with solutions. And that's what the Nuffield Research Placement Program wants. It wants you to have that opportunity. And I think it would have been something that our founder, Lord Nuffield, would have been very pleased with. You may remember, you may know that Lord Nuffield himself was, of course, a manufacturer, an engineer, but he also put enormous focus on science, engineering, and medicine. He gave a lot of his money to the development of it in the United Kingdom. So I think he would have been immensely pleased to see you, a young generation of people, moving into these important areas. And you were chosen to be part of this program because the people that we talked to said you were capable of doing these great things. We were confident that you had the aptitude and skills to work with experts on a live research question. And when I see what you've done, we're not disappointed. You've done all sorts of things. You've tackled research and data analysis, various numeracy assignments, all through this virtual learning environment. And you've done some fantastic things. I'll just mention a few of them, but they really leave me inspired. You've gathered evidence on medical challenges, such as, of course, COVID-19, heart disease, and schizophrenia. You've studied the importance of the impact on social media on teenagers during lockdown, and it's just an incredibly important subject at the moment. And you've also looked across the world. You've looked at the impact of solar energy on food security in Africa. In my own patch, you've looked at physics of the flow of rivers on planet Earth and asked about the possibility of life in space. You've modeled climate change, and you've looked how machine learning can be applied to scientific challenges. It's fantastic stuff. And it's all been undertaken with scientists, engineers, medics, who are already engaged in those topics and have really spent the time to teach you and enjoyed having you present. And it was an amazing effort. Just as Tim said, 796 Nuffield students, and also 792 project supervisors. Thanks again to the supervisors for doing this. You came from 171 different organizations, including the University of Sheffield, where I used to be as Vice-Chancellor. So to all of you, and to our partners in the research councils, to the wonderful Gatsby Foundation that funds so many aspects of it, I want to say a huge thank you. You know, COVID-19 has taken a lot from us, but it hasn't taken away our hope and a determination about the future. And every one of you, and I really mean this, every one of you is the real hope and the real resource we have as a society. Talented, gifted people who want to work, who want to do things, who want to make a difference in the future, and are willing to put in the hard work and effort and work with great teachers. So I hope, I really hope, that the work you've done will be just the beginning for you, not just as scientists, but as citizens and people who understand what's going on, what has to be done to solve many of the problems. You've come from so many different backgrounds, but you shared in a joy of investigation and discovery, and also of making a difference in the world. So I don't want to go on because we're going to hear about the real stuff. But, from the foundation, from the heart of what Lord Nuffield wanted, I want to say with Tim and with all the others, we are immensely proud of what you've done. And we want to wish you a great big success for your work in the future. So thank you, everyone.
Keith, thank you very much indeed. And thank you for inspiring us with that mixture of seriousness and determination and optimism and idealism, which undermines all great academic endeavours, and giving a sense of the possibilities that lie ahead for everyone here. Thank you. So we'll now set out to give an impression of the sheer variety of science, as Keith was mentioning, that has been undertaken over this summer. And we're deeply grateful to the students and the supervisors who volunteered today to come forward and speak for a few minutes about projects that, after all, took a long time to do. So first, we have a joint presentation from a partnership project from two students from two different schools in Wales, Faradon Larg from St Martin's School and Rajib Ahmed from Bryn Tyrion Comprehensive. Their placement was at Cardiff University, which has been long associated with this programme. And their project could not have been more relevant: agent-based simulation of COVID-19 transmission. So let me hand over to them.
Okay, just gonna start presenting now. Okay, Ms. Faradon here as well.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep. Okay, so hi, my name is Rajib, and
I'm Faradon. What we did over the summer was basically create an agent-based model of the coronavirus. An agent-based model is one where each agent in the model has a unique characteristics. These are used to determine the actions made within the model. We were motivated by the chance of being able to visualize how the virus might spread within a random environment with parameters we could control. This image shows an overview of the final model. Along the left-hand side, you can see the key and the parameters which you could put into the model. At the center, you see all the hubs which we placed into the model and the agents, and later on we'll show you a live demo of their actual movements. At the bottom, you can see the graph of the infected agents and the deaths and immune that come out of each model instantiation. Here you can see the different colors we assigned to the SIR model. Starting off, all agents are susceptible, or green in this case, and we gave infected agents the color red. As agents progress, they can either become immune or dead, i.e. removed from the model. And here we have the hubs. This graphic shows the different hubs and the colors they come in. Each hub facilitates different properties. For example, hospitals can take in infected agents, and agents can move back to their home location if a lockdown were to occur. Hospitals and shops occupy a space of 4 squares and can come in different shapes, as seen here.
okay, so I'm going to discuss the methodology we took and some results we found. So while I'm speaking, I'm going to play a run of the model in the background. You can see what the final product came out. It's a bit sped up, so you guys can gauge what it's like. And here there's 1,000 people in the model, and half of them are performing hygienic measures, which you can tell from the side here. So first, we needed to build a good base of knowledge when we started to start building the program. So we studied many academic papers to get an idea of how to model things, model epidemics. So we discovered the CERN model, and we found out that probability was very important in a simulation like this. And this probably the most difficult part was finding probability values for all the events to occur. So once we found that, we could begin discovering how we could code it. So we started researching the MESA programming library, and from there we discovered how we could code something like this. And then once we felt that we had a good base of knowledge to work off of, we began programming, which involved building environments, coding, and repositories so we could collaborate. And in the collaboration, since we were at distance, we had to communicate quite often, and for this use Discord. It was the most convenient for both of us to use. And this communication was key, as we both need to be constantly updated on what the current status of the project was. So we both knew what was happening. So I'm just going to go through a few results we had. So we came through with a few conclusions as outlined in our report. I'm going to cover the most interesting one that we found. So on the left, we have what we found was an ineffective lockdown scenario, and on the right, we have an effective lockdown scenario. So here on the left, the lockdown was lifted too early, which led to an influx of cases, as characterized by the second here. And what that led to is another spike in cases, a lot more deaths, and possibly a lot of stress on the hospital systems. What we found was that the outcome of this was the same or similar to if nothing had been done at all. And if often it was found to be worse because there'd be economic downturn. Obviously the model doesn't model this, but we could see from the timescales it would be much longer, but with the same outcome. On the right, we have an effective lockdown where the lockdown was long enough to quell all the cases or isolate them. And that way, once the public were allowed to go outside or mix together again, the cases were not spiral out of control.
Okay, so throughout the project, we learned how to effectively research and write about data through activities provided by the Nuffield Foundation at the beginning of the project. To build a strong foundation for the project, we used these newfound research skills to learn more about the nature of the virus. We learned how to use Python and the MESA library, as Rajiv mentioned, which helped us complete the implementation of the model. Finally, we wrote an academic report combining everything we learned about into 15 to 20 pages.
Finally, I'm just going to go through some acknowledgements. We'd like to thank Dr. Pailan Deng of Cardiff University, who was there for us pretty much throughout the whole project, giving us advice and input and ideas for what we should do next. And we'd also like to thank Andrew and Josh from TechniQuest, who gave us the information and the platform really to carry out the whole project in the first place and paired us up with our project idea. And obviously, we'd like to thank the Nuffield Foundation itself for providing a spectacular platform for people like us to do STEM projects. And without the foundation or the three people I've mentioned, honestly, none of this would have been possible. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Fardan, Rajiv, thank you very much indeed. It's quite sobering to think of you working in real time on the greatest crisis of our time. And that was a magnificent presentation. Thank you very much. So we now will move to Northern Ireland, to Karina Piotrowska from Grosvenor Grammar School, and her placement was at Queen's University Belfast, and her research project, Risk Factors in Cardiovascular Disease. I'm afraid Karina found out this morning that she has Wi-Fi problems, which prevents her joining us live. But here are her problem-solving skills. It didn't daunt her in the least, and she has sent us her slides and her voiceover presentation. So we're going to play that to you now.
Hello, I'm Karina Piotrowska, and my project was on the risk factors in cardiovascular disease. So what I mean by risk factors is just factors that increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. So I decided to research diabetes, age, blood pressure, and gender, and I decided to see whether these factors had any impact on cardiovascular disease. So to analyze these factors, I had to use statistical analysis. I was given a sample of 262 people by the Nuffield Foundation, and I simply analysed these by doing statistical analysis such as the student t-test, 95% confidence limits, and chi-squared tests. Another part of my research project was actually looking at reviews and looking at different research papers to see what the current research and the current consensus was on cardiovascular disease. I decided to focus on the actual cellular mechanisms and the cellular basis behind cardiovascular disease simply because this was what I was most interested in. So there are three parts of this research that I found particularly interesting and I'd like to look into more. The first was the concept of monocytes and how they adhere to the endothelial lining in blood vessels, and how this was caused by chemicals released by the cells in the endothelial lining. Another really interesting part of my research was a paper on biofilm formation in plaques, because I'd just never heard about that before. And finally, the role of reactive oxygen species in inflammation was really interesting, just because of the new drug development opportunities this represents, and I think it would be really interesting to look into more. Overall, I think this was one of the most interesting and intriguing parts of my research project, and I'd love to go back to it and do more research on it in the future. So after my research methods of statistical analysis and my literature search, I got results. And for my first risk factor of gender, I plotted a graph and I discovered that gender does play a role in cardiovascular disease, and it is a risk factor, with males being more likely to suffer than females. So I used the chi-squared test and got a p-value of less than 0.05, which meant that there is a significant difference. With regards to diabetes, I was quite surprised because I didn't find any significant difference, meaning that people who suffer from diabetes aren't any more likely to suffer from cardiovascular disease. So in our sample, at least, diabetes wasn't a risk factor. And finally, after conducting statistical analysis on my last risk factor of age, I found that age affects female risk of cardiovascular disease more than it affects male risk. I then plotted a graph of the 95% confidence limits of males and females with and without cardiovascular disease, with age on the y-axis. I also found that older women are more likely to suffer from cardiovascular disease than younger women, and this made sense because I'd previously researched in my literature analysis that as women get older, their estrogen levels decline, and estrogen has a vasoprotective role in the cardiovascular system, so it actually made sense that as women got older, their risk of cardiovascular disease increased, and it was really rewarding seeing my research line up with current research on the topic. And finally, I just want to say thank you for listening, and thank you for attending this Nuffield celebration event. I also want to thank my project supervisor, Kieran Lynch, as well as Dr. McKay from Queen's. Their feedback and their help in this project has been invaluable, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. So thank you.
And that was Karina's pre-recorded presentation. And many thanks again to her for getting it to us. So we're now going to go to Scotland and to Gonza Montenegro from Dunblane High School. His placement was with the University of Strathclyde, and his project, How Additive Manufacturing of Aerofoils Can Increase Compressor Efficiency. Over to Gonza.
Hello, everyone. So this is my presentation. I'm Gonza Montenegro. I'm from Argentina and I come from Scotland. I come from Dunblane High School, where I am head boy. And this summer I was doing the Nuffield Future Researchers program. I was looking into additive manufacturing and with the help of the University of Strathclyde. So today what I'm going to cover is my research project, the process of writing my reports, the skills that I gained from a placement, and my final evaluation overall. And at the end, I'm just going to give some links to get in touch if you like. So this is my poster for the report that I wrote, the 11,000 word report. I just summarized it into a poster for me to be able to present. After my 5 weeks of the placement, it was awarded a Crest Gold Award. And the project itself, it was to find out how a jet engine works and the factors that have a role in the compressor of a jet engine, and how additive manufacturing as a form of manufacturing the aerofoils could take advantage and improve the efficiencies compared to normal manufacturing. So additive manufacturing, which some of you may have heard, 3D printing. 3D printing is a type of additive manufacturing, and the way that the manufacture airfoils with additive manufacturing is not 3D printing. It's not the normal way that you would get a 3D printer from home. It's slightly more complex, but it has the same idea, which is adding layers of material on top of one another. The research I went through was reading various papers from different organizations like NASA, learning how to make more aerodynamics airfoils and how to produce them in a better way. And the conclusions that I came to do was my results of the overall projects were that I realized that with additive manufacturing, what you can do is you can get components that are near net shaped, so the material that you use is less, and this decreased the lead times of the component and increased the buy to fly ratios. So the material that you buy and then the one that flies is less, which that means that you're saving material. Overall, in the project, I learned how to communicate my research. So that was one of the skills that I gained thanks to Nuffield. My time management as well, just how to time the research and when to do the projects. So this was during 5 weeks that I did the whole project. And I also installed in me a scholar's train of thought, which I really appreciated. So thank you for listening to my presentation. Here are some links. So if you'd like to contact me if you're interested in my project, if you'd like to read the report, here are some of the links. There's also the link to my LinkedIn profile where you can see some of the other work experience that I've done in aerospace engineering and some other past engineering scholarships or programs that I've been involved with. I just want to give a thank you to the Nuffield Future Researchers, Nuffield Foundation, for getting this sorted and ongoing despite the pandemic. Thank you to Jennifer, who is the coordinator for Scotland, and Ian, who is my mentor from the University of Strathclyde. So thank you very much.
And Gonza, thank you very much indeed. As all our student presenters have said, none of these projects would have been possible without literally the hundreds of supervisors across the country who gave up time over the summer to build the confidence and the understanding among our researchers to deliver their research. And so it's quite appropriate that our next speaker is a supervisor. And I'm going to pass to Claire Drury, who is postdoctoral research scientist at the Wellcome Centre for Integrative Parasitology at the University of Glasgow. Claire herself was the first in her family to go to university. She studied natural sciences at Cambridge and then went on to do a PhD at Norwich. And the lab she works in investigates the effect of worm parasites on the immune system. This summer, she hosted Alice Kelly from Cardinal Newman High School on a project analysing hookworm vaccines. So here is her perspective as a research supervisor of the challenges and rewards of hosting a Nuffield Future Researcher. Claire, over to you.
Thank you, Tim. So I will just share the presentation. Right, so this is Glasgow, looking a lot nicer than it does today. And my lab is based at the university there. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in the lab. So that means I'm kind of in the middle of the academic level of what's classed as an early careers researcher. And our lab investigates the interaction between helminth parasites, so basically intestinal worms, and the immune system. So this is a nice picture of my lab, how we were before lockdown. And I was missing them a lot over the summer. I'm used to going to the lab every day, doing experiments, and all of a sudden everything got shut down. We had to work from home. I was doing analysis rather than actual physical experiments. was getting a bit down. So usually over the summer, we would have several students anyway. I think we had a couple of students from Spain lined up to come over that we were going to supervise. So everyone was feeling a bit down. And then, so I'm signed up as a STEM ambassador, and an email came through to ask for people to supervise people for this Nuffield Future Researchers. So I thought that sounds really good. A good way to actually get some supervision done over the summer and talk about some science. So I contacted Jennifer, the coordinator for Scotland, who was very lovely. We managed to rush through getting everything done and set up for me to supervise someone in about a week or so, because I applied quite late. And we managed to get together a project, and that was analysis of human hookworm vaccines. So I got assigned, or managed to pick Alice, who was very, very good. And basically the project was looking at whether we can expand the candidate vaccine for human hookworm here to see if it protects against other infective species of worms in humans. So it was a really good opportunity to actually get some research done over the summer. Initially, I was a bit, I wouldn't say scared, apprehensive maybe. I'd never had someone that young in this lab to supervise. So usually we would have undergraduates and master students. So having someone at an A-level level, or a Scottish Highers kind of level, I wasn't quite sure how that would work out, but I didn't need to worry at all. Alice was amazing. We managed to get quite a lot done, and she managed to take up all the science really easily. So that was something that I would encourage anyone to do. So just a few kind of take homes from being a Nuffield supervisor. So supervising from a distance was really hard at first. It was kind of hard to think of how we would set up the project and keep going when we were only really having kind of a face-to-face meeting once a week. Usually I'm used to having that daily kind of interaction. So it involved a little bit of different thinking about how to set up. I actually chunked up into lots of different kind of parts of the project that could be done kind of in your own time. And that was actually rewarding. It actually made me think about the project a bit more, which was nice, rather than just kind of bumbling around from day to day. It was actually nice to have to sit and plan a bit more. It was good to view my work from a different angle. Like I said, kind of interacting with someone at that kind of A-level, Highers level made me kind of think about explaining my science a bit more, which is always a good exercise to do. And it means you kind of start to pick up on different things. Like part of the project was doing a literature review. So to do that, Alice had to actually look at a lot of different papers. So it made me read a little bit more as well, which is always something that's good to do as a scientist. Sometimes we get bogged down with lab experiments, but it's always good to see what else everybody else in the world is doing. Which leads on to the second point, enthusiasm for science was gained all around. So sometimes if you're a lab scientist, you kind of get kind of blockaded into your own work. You kind of start viewing your project as maybe a little bit boring because you see it every day. You start looking at what everybody else is doing and saying, oh, that looks a lot more exciting than my project. When actually sometimes it takes that to step back and explain what you do to other people. Usually I'd be doing that by doing some outreach, but I mean, in the current situation, you know, science fairs and stuff like that of face-to-face ones anyway aren't quite so prevalent at the moment. I know a lot of online stuff's been organized, but it was nice to be able to speak to someone about science and actually get some of that enthusiasm back, especially when we weren't actually going into the lab every day, which I think is important. And then moving on, so for me, it helped me gain supervisory skills, and in a slightly different way to our normal lab projects. As an early career researcher as well, it's important to be able to demonstrate things like this for career progression. And not only that, because it was something that I'd taken kind of the initiative to organize off my own back. My boss, my principal investigator, wasn't actually involved that much. So it was something that was a lot more driven by me that I could kind of take more control of, which was very nice to do. It's a good opportunity to get that kind of experience as a postdoctoral researcher. And then it also gave me the chance to give something back. So like Tim said, I was the first member of my family to go to university. It would have been great to have something like this to be involved as an A-level student, to actually get the idea out there of what kind of careers are available and to encourage people from a wide range of backgrounds to apply in STEM subjects. I didn't realize I could do this until I was finishing my degree and looking at things to do, and chose to do a postdoc. So I think that's really good experience for everyone taking part. And like I say at the bottom, I hope I can continue to be involved in this program in the future. So thank you to everyone that's taken part, that's helped organize it, specifically Jennifer for kind of making everything smooth for all of us. And thank you to Alice for being a fantastic student. Thank you.
Well, Claire, thank you. That was a really enlightening presentation, and thank you. It's so it went to the heart, I think, of what's so key about this program, really, which is that generosity, intellectual generosity between generations, giving people a chance. I know we all know how busy and pressured life is in the lab when you can get into one, if the virus isn't stopping getting into it. And then that sense that with interns, researchers coming in from before university, not being quite sure what you're going to find, and then just watching the sheer pace and stretch that becomes possible when a really motivated, bright student is there with the opportunity of being able to engage with a real research scientist. So we're incredibly grateful to you, and indeed to all your colleagues. So let's move on, because our next speaker actually was not on this Nuffield Research Future Researchers program this summer, and that's because Alexis Gantiragas is a Nuffield veteran. He was on the research program in 2016, and his career has taken him on to study biochemistry at University College London, and he's also now Chief Executive of the Journal of Young Investigators. So Alexis is going to give us a sense of where the Nuffield program took him and where he is now. Alexis.
Thank you very much for that. Hi, everyone. Must say it's quite humbling to share a stage with such accomplished and renowned speakers. So yeah, as Tim said, I am the CEO of the Journal of Young Investigators. I'm in my last year of biochemistry at UCL. I also have clocked up about 2 years of full-time research experience over the past few years. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can use this amazing opportunity that you've earned to really capitalize on it and give yourself a head start in the world of science, should that be what you want to do. So I'm just going to work out how to share my screen. Yep. Excellent. Hope everyone can see. Cool. Yeah, so I completed my placement at the Royal Holloway University of London back in 2016. So I was working on bumblebee worker parasites in and around London. Now, unless you've been living under a rock for the past decade or so, you'll know that bees in the UK are struggling. And one quite interesting component of that is that they're actually doing quite well in urban environments like London, which isn't exactly what you'd expect. So one of the issues that bee face is parasite infestation. And you'll see why this is such a big problem. So I want to highlight some of the weird and wonderful monsters that are found inside the insides of bumblebees. So on the far left, you'll see Crithidia bombi, which are nasty little things. So these, when we put them under the microscope, keep in mind that they've been frozen at -80 degrees for several months. They started swimming around. They've got little tails you can't see in there. In the center, there's Apocystus bombi, which just kind of like eats away all the fat. And finally, this poor bee on the far right had over 30 parasitic wasp larvae in its abdomen. It was somehow still alive when it was collected, but that gives you an idea of how big an impact these can have. Now, overall, the results of the project supported the idea that colonies in urban environments tended to actually survive parasite infestations better, and there was less transmission, which was quite an interesting result. So I don't know about you, but I absolutely loved my placement. The working environment wasn't at all what I expected. I remember one day my supervisor got a text from a colleague saying, "Come watch bee sex." And we ran into the basement to go and watch bees mating for half an hour. I enjoyed it so much, I've spent pretty much every free moment since doing more. So shortly after finishing my placement, I got a position as a research assistant at Whiteley Clinic. From there, I got a placement at the German Cancer Research Centre, working on combining novel drugs in the treatment of prostate and colon cancer. I finished a placement at UCL working on healthy aging and full fries, and now I've got a full-time job as a researcher in a biotech company. It's incredibly difficult to get placements unless you're lucky enough to have previous experience, as I have and as you guys have. So you're in an amazing position. I've been lucky enough to have very supportive advisors who've helped me publish a lot of my work, and I've also gotten some media coverage for some of it, as you can see there. Publications are a really big deal in the scientific world, and researchers take you seriously if you have it. So yeah, now I'm going to stop talking about myself and talk a little bit about how you can capitalize on the success of your project. So first of all, a little conflict of interest note, I am the CEO for JYI, but publishing your work is an absolute, it's a huge opportunity. And my journal actually accepts submissions from high school students, and the quality of your projects, it means that almost certainly some of them are going to be publishable. Now, the first, if you decide to go down that route, what you want to do first is talk to your supervisor about it. They'll be able to offer some words of wisdom. You can prepare your manuscript together and you can submit it to JYI. There are also other journals, particularly if your supervisor knows any where it might be suitable. Perhaps go with that. There's also the Young Scientists Journal. Differences, JYI has been around for longer than I've been on this planet, and we're indexed in Google Scholar, and our work it's free to submit your work there, and it's free for people to read it. So yeah, having a publication adds a wow factor to your CV. So also when you eventually go to university, do look out for us if you want to get involved on the editorial side. Yeah, so I'm just going to give some more broad things that you can do with your placement that I've obviously taken advantage of. So first of all, personal statement deadlines are coming up, and unis are often overwhelmed with applications, so it's important to provide concrete examples, and this is an amazing one. I think including and emphasizing that in mine really helped me get my place at UCL. I'd encourage you to join learned societies. I'm student ambassador for the Biochemical Society, but these are really great because they'll offer you grants of up to $2.5 grand for summer to do placements in the future. And they also do things like really cheap or free conferences. I'd encourage you to keep up to date with the research. Science is a very dynamic process. If you don't have much time, I find podcasts like Nature podcast and 60 Second Science a really good way to keep up with that. I'd encourage you to go to conferences and possibly corner researchers you're interested in there, a lot more effective than a cold email. And more importantly, if you've enjoyed this experience, then do more. As I mentioned, I've managed to do about 2 years of full-time research experience. You may have to send out informal requests, but there are also schemes like the Weizmann's Foundation Dr. Bessie Lawrence Award. You've got to be very proactive. Don't be disheartened if not everything works. I could make a whole presentation about everything I failed at. Ultimately, you've passed the first hurdle, which is getting your first experience. You're already some of the most employable young scientists in the country, so don't stress too much. So just finally, I want to say you've graduated from the scheme in spite of the many obstacles that have been put in your way by current circumstances. You, as many researchers around the world, and as we just heard from the previous talk, have shown you can not only function but thrive under adverse conditions. So please don't think that you don't have the same opportunities as someone like me and previous alumni, because you do. You've got an absolutely amazing springboard. I would really encourage you to use it. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Ooh.
Well, unmute, I think I might have been. I'll start again. I was thanking Alex for a host of advice he gave to every student here, and that sense of where paths go next. I thought it was really quite inspiring. Also, I think his message was don't underestimate yourselves. Don't be disheartened and just recognise what you've already done. And clearly, he's looking for people to publish, so go after him. So we now go to a double act. The student-supervisor relationship, as we've been hearing, is absolutely the heart of every successful project. And in this case, the placement we're going to talk about hasn't been at a university, but at the Environment Agency, the public body at the centre of government policy on climate change and the future health of our environment. And our special thanks should go to the Environment Agency, who this year hosted a number of different Nuffield students across different regions of the UK, and it's tremendously good of them. So we're going to first hear, I think, from the supervisor, Jo Coles, who's a senior supervisor at the Environment Agency. And then directly following her, we'll hear from our students, Mary Soriano from St Mark's Catholic School in West London, who researched flood risk awareness in people aged 18 or under. So let's go first to Jo, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I think Mary was just going to share some slides. Mary, brilliant. Going to present mode. Great, thank you very much. So my name is Jo Coles, and I'm an advisor at the Environment Agency. My background actually is flood forecasting and warning, and I'm also a STEM learning ambassador. And this year, for the first time, I supervised 2 out of our 5 Nuffield Future Researchers. Mary is one of them, and I was absolutely blown away by her enthusiasm, passion, and real hard work. I'm actually really proud of you. It's been an incredibly rewarding and enjoyable experience, and I'd like to really thank Nuffield for inviting us to talk to you today. So on the next slide, as an organisation, the Environment Agency deals with a wide range of activities to protect and improve the environment, such as climate change adaptation, air and water quality improvement, and flood defence schemes, to name a few. Nuffield Research Placements have allowed us to raise the awareness and reputation of our organisation and the variety of roles we cover. So here are a few pictures of our Nuffield placements since 2018. Unfortunately, we haven't got pictures from this year due to lockdown and so forth, but we thought we'd put these down to show you. These young people are the environmental guardians of the future, and our collaboration with programmes like Nuffield inspire and empower them to do so. The project we're sharing with you today is focused on my particular area of work, flood risk communication and awareness. Our climate is changing. The UK is becoming warmer and wetter, bringing an increased threat of more extreme and frequent flooding events. February 2020 was England's wettest ever, and it was the UK's 5th wettest winter on record. You may have seen the devastating flooding that occurred throughout the winter, and particularly remember storms Kira and Dennis bringing heavy rainfall in February. It wasn't too long ago that Storm Desmond brought record-breaking rainfall, which led to flooding across northern England in 2015 and 16. The Environment Agency flood schemes have protected nearly 130,000 properties this year, but with climate change bringing more frequent and extreme events, it's more important than ever that people know about the impacts of flooding. So we have been tracking public opinion of their flood risk and awareness since 1999. We know that over 50% of those at flood risk still do not either believe or know that they are, and that most people don't understand the impact flooding can have or what actions to take. Some of our key pieces of research tell us that we should stop talking about probability and risk in mathematical language, and we should keep the language really simple. We should focus on impacts and the actions people can take, and maps are not always necessarily the best way to describe the risk of flooding. So on the next slide, what do you think we need to do? Well, it's really important that we increase the number of people who believe they are at risk, are inspired to take action, and participate in managing flood risk locally. So how can we better communicate and engage with people? What do you think would grab your attention or make you want to learn more about flooding? So the research I've just told you about focuses on adults and their flood risk awareness, but I think it's really important that we find out how young people feel, what they know, and how we can empower them to take action. You have an important part to play in shaping the future. So I asked the students this year to think about what would inspire them and their peers to be more flood risk aware. And here's Mary to tell you more about what she did.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary. I applied to do this research project because I'm really passionate about the environment. I wanted to make a real difference. I've become more and more interested about climate change and flood risk awareness over the recent years after learning about it at school and seeing the devastating impacts flooding has had in the UK and across the world. I found that scientists and researchers generalize their public messages to those aged 18 and above, and I feel like they could cater more to the younger audience. If more people were aware of flooding and what they can do to prepare for these devastating events, then it could reduce the long-term negative impacts. The main objective of my project was to investigate flood risk awareness amongst young people and try to understand what engages them in these issues and where they can learn the most. To start with, I developed a survey to send out to everyone in my year group, and with 30 responses, and the results were really interesting. In fact, I was surprised by some of the responses. Out of 12 students, I have found that 19 did not know what to do in a flood. 15 did not know where to go to find out more about flooding, which aligns with the results of the public flood survey undertaken by the Environment Agency, with 12 out of the 30 respondents saying that they did not know about flooding until they were taught about it in school, which led me to the conclusion that students simply are not fully aware of flooding and the risk that imposes on our nation. It's worth noting that all the respondents have not experienced flooding, and our local area is not at high risk of fluvial flooding. However, with extreme rainfall events becoming more frequent with climate change, there is no reason why we may not be affected by surface water flooding in the future, which happens when there is so much rainfall in such a short amount of time that the drains become overwhelmed. It is also really important that people are aware of flooding, as they may go on holiday to an area that is at high flood risk and they do not know what to do to stay safe. My research also provided me with many more interesting results, which I haven't got time to share with you today. But through these results, I was able to explore short-term and long-term recommendations for the Environment Agency to consider and potentially adapt their strategies to engage with more young people. An example of a short-term recommendation that I've suggested in my report is appointing student ambassadors. Student ambassadors in school council meetings would give them leadership skills and empower them to make more environmentally conscious decisions in their daily activities. An example of a more long-term recommendation was to make flood drills an emergency national standard taken as seriously as a fire drill, which is practiced across all nations in all infrastructures. I also recommended that flood awareness is included in the PSHCE curriculum. Through my report, you have seen that, I was able to see that flooding was mainly taught in schools and wasn't exactly more aware in young students through the news and social media. Through this, I think that schools are one of the best ways to get this message across, which is in fact being taken further as a result, and the Environment Agency have already started discussing the necessary things to take this forward. I've really enjoyed my placement and learned so much, and I just want to say thank you. But this would not have been possible without Nuffield's modules on developing and researching skills that have helped me with my questionnaire, data handling, identifying good research resources, and how to simply use the internet effectively. But I've not only gained developing and research skills, but I've also built on my essential skills as a person and a future employee with the amazing guidance of my supervisor, Joe. And here is a small quote to leave with you. It's from my supervisor, Joe, and thank you for listening.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much indeed, Mary and Joe. That was a superb presentation. And we should read that quote and mark it, because that quote summarizes everything that Nuffield Research Placement Programme has been about. I also think there were so many interesting insights for us all there, and the relationship between research skills and social skills, for instance, which Mary mentioned just at the end there. I think it was an archetypal Nuffield project in a way, because there were recommendations there. I think one of the things that in all the research that Nuffield funds that we notice is that challenge of making sure that the evidence of the data can get through to people's experience so people act on it these days. And that was exemplified in that report, that way of making sure that the science enters people's understanding so they look beyond their immediate self-interest and look at the wider social picture. And thank you very, very much for sharing that with us. So we're now come to the end of the brilliant presentations from our students, past and present, and from their wonderful and supportive supervisors. And I think you've seen this evening the enormous potential that lies in your generation. And by being part of this Nuffield programme, I hope you demonstrated to yourselves just how you can go on to realise that potential. Now, to do that, we'll not need not just your intelligence and your flair, because you've got all of that, but determination, good advice, and a belief in yourselves along the way. And I think no one can give you a better idea of what you're capable of and how you might make that real than our keynote speaker, who's going to close this afternoon's event. Now, Dr. Ozak Isu is an award-winning chartered electronic and electrical engineer. She's the technical lead in smart buildings at BRE, the world's leading building science centre, where she leads a team of engineers and technicians. And she's at that cutting edge of the new smart building technologies that will create the homes and urban landscape of the future. Now, Ozak, as she'll probably tell us, was born and raised in Nigeria. She came to Britain at 17 to study as an undergraduate at Loughborough University, where she graduated with a first-class degree. She was awarded a scholarship to advance to her PhD when aged just 20. She now commits herself, alongside her formidable professional career, to be a champion for young scientists like you. I think she will tell you just how to go about your lives as scientists. So it's a great honour for me to be able to now hand over to Ozak for her to address us with her keynote speech.
Thank you very much, team, for that introduction. Thanks for having me here today to speak to you about myself. So I'm just going to go straight into it. So hi, everyone. Congratulations to all you researchers and all you future researchers. I've been asked today to speak about myself. So what I did when I was at your stage and how I got to where I am today and where I hope to be in the future, because obviously there's still more life and more things to do and more research to do. And so I'm quickly going to talk about those things, basically, about myself. So this is a picture of me when I was a research student at Loughborough University. I was researching how we could use sensors to detect damage on wind turbine blades. And I'll talk about that in my slides to come. So I've decided to use pictures and not go with text, just so that people don't fall asleep. This is basically a photo album. So I was born and raised in Nigeria. I grew up there and I finished all my education up until college in Nigeria. So that's a picture of me as a kid, born 91. That's me in primary school. It was a friend's birthday and I was very eager to have some cake. As you can see, I wasn't even looking at the camera. And then here's me in high school. So I put these in brackets. In Nigeria, in our educational system, you are ranked. And so I tend to look back on this because it shows the come up, is what I call it, basically. And so I wasn't always the best in my class or anything, is what I'm trying to say, basically. I had to work at it. So tutoring, lessons, and just practicing as well. And I'll talk to you about my motivations as to why I decided to become an engineer as well. So this is me in high school, age 10 till 16. And in Nigeria, our educational system at 16, after high school, you go straight to university. We don't have A-levels. It's not part of our educational system. But because I was 16, I was going to go to university in Ghana, which is the country next to us in Nigeria. Well, there are a few blocks next to us. There are other countries in between. And I rarely ever praise Ghanaians, but I'll take the fun one time. As a Nigerian, we just have this thing where we don't compliment Ghanaians, but I will. They do have a much smoother educational system in Ghana. So in Nigeria, we have frequent strikes in the academic calendar. So a 4-year or 5-year course would easily become 7 years because either lecturers are on strike because they're not being paid, or students are on strike because these fees are just too high. So very early on, my family, we didn't have holidays or anything. Education is very, very important in Nigeria and to my family. So we were saving towards, my parents were saving towards our education. And I knew early on I was going to study in Ghana, but they weren't going to take me because I was 16. I had to be 17 to go to study there. So my parents didn't want me sitting at home for a year, not doing anything, and they sent me off to an A-level school called Oxbridge in Lagos. And while I was there, my peers were talking about UCAS, and I was like, what is that? Never heard of it, because I knew where I was going already. I was just there to kill time. But my tutors encouraged me to apply like everyone else. And because I was there for a year, they advised me to do something called accelerated A-levels. Don't do it. Do it the normal way they asked you to do. So what that means is your AS and A2 in 1 year. And that's just because A-level schools are really expensive because it's not part of our educational system in Nigeria. It's strictly for those who know they're going to study abroad. And so, yeah, I did my AS and A2 in 1 year, and it's no wonder why I only managed to achieve C grades in maths, physics, and geography. Now, having said that, I had friends who were really, Nigerians are really clever. They had A's. I still don't know how they did it till this day, but that was how I ended up having aspirations to come to study in the UK. Now, for my motivation, so I grew up in Cross River State, which is the southernmost state there in Calabar as the capital. And is a tourist attraction. That tourism is how we make our income as a state. We don't really have much else going on for us. Calabar was one of the final ports for slaves and during the slave trade period. And so a lot of people come back to trace their roots. And so that's how that particular state makes money. We also have some oil reserves. So Nigeria is one of the largest oil and gas producers in Africa. So, but because of tourism, we were taught very early on the importance of protecting our environment. So I was entering essay competitions about the environment and the importance of protecting that. And so I just put a picture of Cross River. This is a mini, should I say, advertisement or promotion. So if you ever want to check it out, that's Cross River State. That's what it looks like in Obudukatu Range, where that picture was taken. But what my motivation that actually led me to decide to study electronic and electrical engineering was a lack of constant power and electricity. So I went through these stages growing up in Nigeria, and my access to electricity depended on my parents' income. So as my parents' quality of life was improving, that's how my access to electricity improved. So when I was really little here, I was doing homework with candles, and my parents used to make sure we do our homework before it gets too dark, because otherwise it's not very good to be using candle to do your homework. So we went from candles to kerosene lanterns, and then rechargeable lamps that they'll take to the office and bring back. They'll charge it in their office and bring back for myself and my siblings to do our homework till they're able to afford their own private generators. Now, with generators, everyone is buying diesel. It adds to noise pollution, it adds to air pollution. So it's not the most sustainable way, but it is the aspirational goal for most Nigerians because we don't have reliable power. So merging those two things together, my passion and love for tourism and protecting the environment, sustainable tourism and protecting the environment, as well as my lack, or should I say, of electricity. And my dad told me that it's the people who fix power is electronic and electrical engineers who do that. And I said, that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I came to do at Loughborough. So I applied for the MEng program, but obviously because I didn't make the grades, I was asked to downgrade to a BEng program, and that there are opportunities during the academic year, if I get a 2-1 and above, to go back onto the MEng program. But I decided to stay on the BEng program while I was at Loughborough, and I got real good support from my personal tutors and my lecturers, and I was able to graduate with first class, and the university gave me a scholarship to go straight to my PhD, which is me here at my graduation, basically. Now, my funding was for 3 years, so I had to look for a job midway through that. Now, I got many rejections. I remember applying for over 100 jobs. I kept a spreadsheet just so that I don't apply to the same company twice. But yeah, why I'm telling this story is that there will be challenges, but if you're passionate about something, if you're driven, you will get there eventually. It might take many years, it might take a month, it might be long, it might be short, but there will be challenges, and it's very, very important that you are passionate about what you want to do, because sometimes it's that passion and that desire that gets you over the line eventually. I was looking for jobs in the energy sector, obviously, because that was what was my motivation. But they weren't willing to sponsor visas, because as international students, you require a visa to study, to take up employment. So I started looking broader. So I can't be at the generation end of electricity where I wanted to be. What about the consumer end? And I found out about the construction industry. Now, we use power in every aspect of our lives, and whether it's at school, for work, at home, to live, electricity is present. So I applied to a company called Condell, and I got a graduate job as a graduate engineer designing electrical services for buildings. So your light, how electricity gets to your site, whether it's a school or a hospital, and how it's used and distributed within that building, your lighting, and your CCTV access control, that kind of stuff. I did that for 2 years and was promoted to a full engineer, electrical engineer. And then I left after working on international projects, which is great. So I couldn't travel as a kid, but now through my job, I was able to travel to other parts. I even got to go on a project that was in Nigeria. So it was nice leaving at 17 as a teenager and then coming back home on a real world project, and I was the electrical lead engineer on that project. So it was really nice, you know. And then I left BRE, I left Condell, and I joined BRE, which is the Building Research Establishment. So I didn't talk about what I did for my PhD because I said it at my opening slide, but basically detecting damage on turbine blades using sensors. Now, during my role here at Condell, I started looking at ways to merge the stuff I did in my research for my PhD and the current work I do in buildings. And that's what my current role as technical lead perfectly does. It looks at how we use sensors to improve people's, shall I say, the occupant's experience of a building, but also looks at the risk associated with that. Now we have sensors collecting data within buildings. And I just put up some slides here to show some of the stuff. So these are estates in BRE. BRE is located in Watford. and we have about 500 employees, and we have various centers where we do research. So our facility is a test bed. So we have houses, demo houses of a smart home, and we try out and experiment on various types of technology. How easy are they to be used? How easy are they to be compromised? What are the threats? Well, it's about cybersecurity, and all this learning and research informs policies that are then applied by manufacturers within the industry, but also people who design buildings. So yeah, I just put up some pictures. So a lot of it involves modeling of buildings using BIM and using various types of technology, but also looking at new ways. So if we're putting a lot of sensors within buildings, how do they communicate with each other? So connectivity is one of the areas we look at, but also how do we visualize the data? Who gets to see the data? Who gets access to that data? And what kind of learnings can we get from that data to improve future buildings that we design? So I wouldn't bore you with the details, but this is a nutshell of what I work on as part of my role in BRE. Now, throughout my career, I've had people who have supported me. I've had mentors, and my line managers at my previous roles who have nominated me for various awards. And sometimes I still can't believe it. And when I think about Ozak, who was 2 years old, looking at that cake, to Ozak now, if somebody told me this would be my career story, I wouldn't have believed them. It's beyond my wildest dreams. I think the notable one was winning the Institution of Engineering and Technology's Young Woman Engineer of the Year award in 2017. I got to be an ambassador for the Institution of Engineering and Technology. I joined the institution as a member when I came to the UK in 2008. So like almost 10 years down the line to win that coveted prize, I was I felt really proud of myself. I've also, last year in 2019, I was awarded a travel award from the institution that enabled me to take part in an expedition. So 25 women engineers went on an expedition to Malawi to build a new science, technology, engineering, and mathematics center for 125 students. Now, I tell that because, again, it's taking my actual role as an engineer in my job I do, both from combination of like academia and professional working, and exporting that to improve and work on sustainable development projects that have real impact on people. And this is a plug again, it's on YouTube if you want to watch the documentary of how we got on with that project. And then just last week I won the Chartered Engineer of the Year award for 2020. I became a chartered engineer in May 2019, and since that time I have supported other peers and colleagues towards achieving chartership, and I would recommend it in your future. So to summarize, this is going to be my last slide. Takeaway. So this is now looking back on everything that's happened so far for me. And this is just the beginning, the way I see it. Yes, I'm not 16 anymore. I'm still classed as an early to mid career professional within the industry. So there's still room for me to grow. There's still things for me to learn. But just looking back to kind of share with you things I took away and things that have helped me so far is one, STEM. So I use STEM. I usually use engineering, but I noticed we have quite a lot of scientists on today. So STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and maths, is a global field. So look at me, I grew up in Nigeria. I've gotten jobs in the UK. And because of that, I've been able to travel to other parts of the world to work on projects. It is global. So your skills would always be required. And it's one of the key things I like to stress to young people. The opportunities are global. It's also very diverse. So I started off focusing on the lack of electricity, and I've now worked on projects around the consumption of electricity within a different sector, which is construction industry. There is still other sectors now, like around technology, how we use technology to actually measure how people use electricity within buildings and how we improve the transition to more low carbon and sustainable energy. It's challenging. And people see challenging as a negative word. It is a positive thing. Challenging is a test of your ability. And there will be highs, there will be lows, there will be times when you're really successful, and there will be times where you're not quite sure. I still have that till now, even though I'm like a technical lead. There are things I don't know, But that's the great thing about science, engineering, technology is a constantly evolving thing, and you keep learning as you keep going along. Once you have that open mindset, it's a lot easier to excel in it. It underpins our collective success. So even today in the battle against this pandemic, you have quite a lot of scientists who are working day and night to look for solutions. So it is making a positive difference. Yes, there are negative aspects when science is taken in a negative way and it's not ethical, and hopefully none of you will be unethical about your practice of science, but it is about making difference and making a positive difference. I think something I'd say is work smart. A lot of people say work hard. That is important. I'm obviously dedicating time to things, but working smart is understanding what your clear strengths are and also your weaknesses, and dedicating time and maximizing time towards addressing those. So I know what my strengths are and I know what my weaknesses are. One of my weaknesses is about being concise, and that's why I have decided to go with pictures today, just so that I am conscious of it. But that, in that particular sense, being aware of it, you can then make changes and adjust it. But it's also good to know what your strengths are, because you can play towards them and you could maximize those opportunities. Google it. If you're not sure, don't be afraid to ask. I know when I was younger, I always felt I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to sound silly. So I'd rather not ask. Always ask, because at the end of the day, nobody knows it all. We are all learning. Even till this day, as experienced researchers, we're still collaborating, and always take up opportunities to collaborate. I think sharing your knowledge and receiving knowledge from other people is one of the key ways we can advance as society. So countries that have developed their electricity systems, other countries who haven't can learn from them. That exact model may not fit them, but they can adjust it to suit their own living. So Google it. I still Google every single thing, like as it comes to my head. Have a plan. Don't be too rigid with it. Like, I didn't have a plan to come and do an undergraduate, a PhD. I've just gone where the opportunity leads me. So, but I knew that I was interested in engineering. I knew I was interested in becoming an electronic engineer. So just having that high level banner should be enough. And then you can flesh it out as you go along. Seek out opportunities. I skipped one. So network is very good. I like that. People had like LinkedIn profiles and stuff. It's not too early to have one. And you could also reach out to people within your discipline that you're interested in to become mentors, because we all need mentors. I have mentors till this day for various stages in my career, whether it was my personal tutor at university, to my supervisors at my PhD. It is important, even in my professional life now. I hope to be a leader within the industry someday. So who are the people that I admire that are currently good leaders? And yeah, just connect with them and try to say, gain wisdom from them. And seek out opportunities, especially in this pandemic, where I feel the pandemic has made things more virtual and accessible. In the past, most things in the UK seem to be in London. I don't know why, but perhaps because it's the capital. But it seemed like now with the pandemic, you could access opportunities virtually. I know various companies are doing virtual internships as well throughout this period. So just ask, which is my third point on the slide. Take opportunities that are presented to you. Just do it. Don't overthink it. I tend to overthink things and I talk myself out of it. But ever since I started saying yes to things, I've just gone with the flow. And if I learn something, great. Well, most times, and not 100% of the time, you will learn something, even if the outcome may be negative. And give opportunities too. Many young people don't realize that you also have some skills and that you currently possess. You don't have to be at the end of your career to be given opportunities to others. So for example, I put some examples of pictures or organizations I support on the right. So you could volunteer or join any of these institutions, and you could actually be a tutor. So with the Access Project, I was tutoring students in GCSE maths, and all you require is, if you've passed that stage, you have the knowledge, you have the skills to be able to do that for someone else. And something I have learned in doing the process of knowledge sharing, it's actually helped me unlock new skills and develop further than I actually imagined going into it. So I went into it looking at it as I am giving my time to someone else, but I ended up gaining so much more from that experience. It improved my confidence. I used to be very shy about presenting or about talking about myself. And today I'm your keynote speaker. How crazy is that? And the last one is have fun with it. Science, it's fun in my opinion. And engineering is fun as well for me. And having that passion for it keeps you going. I put some pictures up here about roots. So this is more specific to engineering, but what I'm trying to elaborate on that point is that there are various routes to your final goal, and not university may not be for everyone. You could go through the apprenticeship routes. There are a lot of organizations that offer that route as well to young people. So explore your routes and Google it again, like I said. Funding is also another challenge when I speak to young people often, is like where to get funding. The science, technology, engineering, and maths field is really looking to invest in young people. So these are some of the ones that I know of that offer funding and bursaries. The IET, I sit on the panel that supports the Horizon bursaries for young people to do both apprenticeships and university courses. So yeah, the final thing is using social media to improve your learning. I still use YouTube videos till this day because I'm a visual learner. So being able to see it, and there's so many channels on there you could follow without endorsing or recommending any specific one. But yeah, thank you very much. And I just want to end by saying congratulations to you all today. And thank you so much for inviting me and having me on today. Thank you.
Oh, Zach, thank you. That was fantastic. There we have a portrait of an engineer to look at. And it's very difficult to know how one follows that, because it was inspirational on so many levels. It was a really fitting climax to this afternoon. It was inspirational personally in terms of your life journey, but also inspirational in your description as a scientist of essentially imagining the future for everyone's benefit. And that sense you had of, it's not just the information, the data, but it's the making that data accessible so people can make sense of it and do things with it and help people with it. But then there were so many one-liners which we could all keep, I think, as principles for our lives. I loved ask and collaborate. Don't be too rigid, don't overthink, nobody knows it all. And there are various routes to your final goal. I think, and also that sense, which I think has been infused throughout the whole of this afternoon, the need for intellectual generosity. If you take opportunities, you give opportunities. And it's in that collaborative effort that real learning and the advancement of knowledge takes place. So that was superb, and we are really, really grateful to you, all of us, for you giving us the time to be able to listen to you. So it really remains only for me to thank everyone for having been here this afternoon, and to thank you for your participation in all sorts of ways. And I'd also like to thank one person who I haven't mentioned at all, who's been behind the scenes all this time, making all this happen, and that's Mola Imri, our head of events, who has masterminded the afternoon. Now, I'm sure there'll be lots of questions and topics that will come up in the chat online, and we'll try and follow those up and come back to you with an answer. And also to all our researchers, you will be receiving from Nuffield a small appreciation of your achievement. We're really sorry we haven't been able to invite you up onto a stage and present you with your certificate in person, but it is on its way to you in the post, with a few other small goodies as well, and a voucher to encourage you to choose something as a treat to remember us by. So, on behalf of the Nuffield Foundation, on behalf of everyone here, thank you to everyone who has made this possible, all of you in the laboratories, in your institutions over the past weeks, everyone at all the different participating organisations. And thank you all for a most fantastic achievement in the most challenging of times. And can I wish you all, on behalf of the Foundation, good luck in the days and months ahead. And thank you for being with us today. Bye-bye.